And this song is a story about a young Australian fella, young Australian boy born in Marupna Base Hospital up in the Golden Valley. And upon coming out of Marupna Base Hospital, went straight to the riverbank, where his people lived and his family lived. And this young fella eventually moved back to where his mother comes from, his mother's country, down in southwest Victoria, to the Gunditjmara peoples. And he stayed with his people until he was 3 years old. He stayed with his mother, his father, his brothers and his sisters, his uncles and his aunties and his cousins, until he was age 3. But one day, the welfare and the police came and took this young man from his family. So what this song is about is about Australia, and this is an Australian story. So when people really start to realise that this story belongs to all of us, not just ourselves as Aboriginal people, but it belongs to all of us, this story of this young boy that was taken from his family at age 3. And only when we start to realise that this story belongs to all of us, this story is an Australian story, only then will we start to realise what reconciliation is all about. So I'm going to start singing this song about this young fella who was taken away at the age of 3. But thank goodness he come back to his family and to his people. This is an Australian story where they took the children away. Story's right, the story's true. I will not tell the lies to you, that the promises they did not keep. How they fenced us in like sheep. Said to us, come take a hand. Set us up on mission land. They told us to read, to write and pray. Then they took the children away, took the children away, children away. Snatched from their mother's breast, said this is for the best, took them away. The welfare and the policemen, well, they said you got to understand, we're gonna give to them what you can't give. Teach them how to really live. Teach them how to live, they said. Humiliated them instead. Well, they taught them this, and others taught them prejudice when them took them children away. The children away, breaking our mother's heart, tearing us all apart, took them away. One dark day on Framingham, they came and didn't give a damn while my mother cried, go get their daddy. He came running, fighting me. Mother's tears were falling down, and my dad shaped up, and he stood his ground, and he said, touch my kids, well, you gotta find me, you know that. Then they took us from our family, he took us away. Well, they took us away, snatched on our mother's breast, said this is for the best, took us away. Told us what to do and say. Well, they taught us all these white man's ways, but then they split us up again, and they gave us gifts to ease the pain. Sent us over to the foster homes, and as we grew up, well, we fell alone, 'cause we were acting white and feeling black. One sweet day, the children came back, the children came back, the children came back, back where their hearts go strong, back where they all belong, children came back. And the children came back. Oh, those children came back. Back where they understand. Back to this mother's land. Children came back. Back to their mother. Back to their father. Back to their sister girl, back to their brother, back to their people, back to their land. All the children came back. Yeah, the children came back. Well, the children came back. Everybody, I came back. Thank you. As I was saying before at the start, this is our story. And people about reconciliation is about that, when we start to own the whole story of this country. Yeah. I'll take this one for a minute. You know, when I was taken away as a little fella, I learned pretty fast how to walk in another man's shoes, another man. And I survived pretty well away from my people. I learned to, so in a way, I learned to walk in both worlds. And I suppose that's what reconciliation is about. If we're all of us, black, white, yellow, brindle, learn to walk in the two worlds. And it's good. I feel good that I can do that. This next song is a new song, a song hopefully you're going to release this year earlier on a new album. And it talks a bit about trying to find some common ground. And it's a prayer to the old people that it's not too late. You know, I see things happening not in this, just in this country, but the world. And so it's not just this country that needs to be reconciled, it's the whole blooming world. And but things are starting to infiltrate and start to affect us here as well. This song is just called It's Not Too Late. It's a prayer for the children. Hope for a better world, a better future that we can all live in harmony. It's not too late. I'm so sorry for the world today, with all the killing and all the hate. I get down on my knees and pray that it's not too late, that it's not too late for peace, and it's not too late for love, for all the children everywhere. I ask the old ones up above, won't you hear this prayer? Well, it's not too late to turn it round. Got to find some common ground. I know it's there, and it comes as no surprise. It's deep within our children's eyes. It's everywhere. Yeah. So comfort those who wake in fright, and hold them in your arms. Tell them all it'll be all right. Keep them safe from harm. And we hope, as we all wait to see the snow white dove, for all the children everywhere. I ask the old ones up above, won't you hear this prayer? Well, it's not too late to turn it round. Gotta find some common ground. I know it's there. when it comes, there's no surprise. It's deep within our children's eyes. It's everywhere. No, it's not too late for peace and love. I ask you all one up on despair. Is it too late? No, it's not too late. Sit down. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name's Stan Grant. I'm the MC for the evening. I want to welcome all of you here tonight, honoured guests, friends of Reconciliation Australia, and everyone committed to making this a better country for us all. 25 years of Reconciliation Australia. I want to just pay my respects to Archie Roach as well. Thank you, Uncle Archie, for a fantastic performance. Hopefully we might get you back up again a little bit later this evening, if that's all right. Hopefully. I want to call first of all to the stage Justin Muhammad, who will give the acknowledgement of country. Justin. Let's change. No, it would be in fact Auntie Caroline Briggs. Thank you.
It's always this journey. I've been travelling and I think that people thought I was a waste, but I'm here. So it's a celebration, 25 years of Reconciliation Australia. We've had our moments and we've travelled through those, and firstly I'd like to pay my respects to the land that we now stand, and also pay my respects to my elders, both past and present, and to our future. And it is also to Archie. He's the great orator of our historical events would have impacted on us. So it's about Archie and those songs that brought us about to celebrate the return and connection back to country. So to our fellow countrymen and to you, our guests. Wominjeka, Marambik Bunurong, Nurmder, Barupton, Ata Willem. That means welcome to our beautiful home, the lands of the two great bays, Nurm, being Port Phillip Bay, and Marin, Western Port Bay. So you get a little bit of picture of the ideas. And also to my neighbours of the Wurundjeri or the Woiwurrung, the Wadawurrung and the Gunai Kurnai, who are here tonight. So it is about that celebration, that we can all come together and be here present tonight. As a descendant of Melbourne's first people, of the Bunwurrung language group of the Greater Kulin Nation, I'm pleased to be able to welcome you all here. And as guests on our country, it is important for everybody to understand and appreciate the history and the culture of the Indigenous peoples of this area. This is the traditional country of the Yalukit Willem of the Bunwurrung language group, who were one of the five language groups that made up the Kulin Nation. And they were the Woiwurrung, the Bunwurrung, the Wathwurrung, the Jarawurrung, and the Tanwurrung, and the Jarawurrung. And this estate that covers the Yalukit Willem area, it is now 200 years since the Europeans first entered our country and attempted to make a settlement on Sullivan's Bay, which is down on Mornington Peninsula, Collins Settlement. Years later, they entered on our sacred river, which is called the Birrarung, and made a settlement we now call Melbourne. They sailed through our great bay, which is called Nurm. While these were catastrophic events for our people, their legacies survived, and we are still here today. What we have learnt from our ancestors' achievements still resonates with us. This included the core values of learning, of showing respect, celebrating life, and honouring sacred ground. The importance of learning. We respect our traditional laws and customs, but we also accept the different ways of the Europeans. This is the same way we share respect with each other's culture and religious or spiritual beliefs. This is our ancestors' legacies. We must remember to celebrate the celebration of life of new children. The coming of the seasons, the visiting of the clans was an important part of traditional life. Today we can support and celebrate the modern Indigenous arts and culture that resonates through all our land. Respecting sacred ground. We should all acknowledge the sacred ground on which we stand. And today we are host to many people from different nations and countries. And as new citizens or new guests on our country, we call upon you to continue to respect sacred ground and the history and the heritage of our country. The struggles to preserve our culture and traditions began with our ancestors in the 1830s. And one of the most important lessons we should take from this struggle was the way we had forged an alliance that led to the many achievements that sometimes we take for granted today. While we may have descended from different clans and language groups, our grandparents and our great-grandparents worked together to achieve the outcomes that we do to celebrate today, and the most important thing that we can learn from the past. Today it is my hope that we can all share in our shared history and take pride and celebrate our great strength of this nation. And it is also time to reflect on the impact of our stolen generations on our communities, and I pay respect to those who were affected by these policies. And according to our traditions, our lands will always be protected by our Creator, Bunjil, who travels as an eagle, and by Wan, who protects our waterways, travels as a crow. Bunjil taught us to always welcome guests, but he required us to ask all visitors to make a number of promises. One, not to harm the lands and waters and not harm our children of Bunjil. And this commitment is made through an exchange of a small bow dipped in the water of the land. So once again, Wominjeka, Merrinbigbik, Bunurong, Nurmdurp, Barupton, Ata Willem, and the celebration or Chinabi to our beautiful 25 years of reconciliation, Victoria. So it's about connection. Thank you, Wominjeka. Thank you.
Thank you, Auntie Caroline. I'd like to call now the Honourable Helen Coonan, Director of Crown Resorts.
Well, thank you very much, Stan, and what a journey you're having. Good evening, everyone. I'm really delighted to join you this evening, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging, of course, the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders, both past and present. To the Honourable Alan Tudge, Minister for Human Services representing the Prime Minister this evening, Opposition Leader Bill Shorten and Chloe Shorten, Reconciliation Australia board members, I know there's a lot here tonight, Indigenous and community leaders, ministers and members of Parliament, and I think we've got one senator, Senator Dodson. I always have to remember the senators, of course, given my background. Former ministers and members of Parliament, thank you all for your attendance tonight. To my fellow Crown Resorts board members, the executive, and importantly, perhaps even most importantly from Crown's perspective, our Indigenous employees, thank you very much. As you know, tonight we're here to celebrate the launch of the National Reconciliation Week, a week that focuses Australia's attention on the progress that has been made towards closing the gap between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and other Australians, and importantly, to highlight the journey still to be travelled. And I'd like to thank Reconciliation Australia for their leadership and commitment in driving social change and for improving economic opportunities for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Australians. Your guidance has, among other things, provided a pathway for corporate Australia to do what they can to redress the inequalities and disparities in employment, in health and in education. As we will hear over the course of tonight, National Reconciliation Week celebrates and builds on the respectful relationship shared by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and other Australians. It provides an opportunity to learn more about our shared histories, culture and achievements. Talking about reconciliation is of course always a positive thing, but to achieve reconciliation we need to get all Australians to be involved however they can. As a Crown Resorts Director and Chair of both Crown's Corporate Social Responsibility Board Committee and Crown Resorts Foundation, I would really like to share with you very briefly some of the progress we've made in our commitment to providing more Indigenous employment, leadership and education opportunities. You'll have to forgive me if I'm quite proud of it, but I am. We've come a very long way since we launched our first Reconciliation Action Plan over 3 years ago. And now with our most recent RAP, we have proudly achieved Elevate status, and we are also a parity employer at Crown. Our first Reconciliation Action Plan helped formalise Crown's long-held commitment to Indigenous Australia and closing the gap on Indigenous inequality. It established a solid platform for us to take a leadership role, as well as challenging our board and our executives and our employees to do even more. And I'm very proud to say that we have accepted that challenge, we have relished the challenge, and we are a better company because of it. True credit, however, for our second Reconciliation Action Plan must go to the work and collaboration of our Indigenous employees, and I salute them here tonight. Since 2009, Crown has provided more than 500 Indigenous Australians with a job opportunity, and our Elevate Reconciliation Action Plan has taken our commitment to employment just a step further. Crown is now focused on developing the skills of our Indigenous employees, helping them wherever possible to take on leadership positions as future managers within the company. We continue, of course, to make Indigenous employment our priority, but we will also work to promote and support our talented Indigenous employees, and we have many, to advance their careers here at Crown. As you may know, Crown has been awarded Australian Employer of the Year by the federal government 3 in the past 6 years, a record no other company has accomplished. It's an achievement held by all our employees, exemplified by the Indigenous team members with us today. Over the course of this evening, I would encourage you to take some time to meet these wonderful men and women. They're a credit to Crown, but more than anything else, I believe they are a credit to their culture and a credit to our country. But despite our progress, we acknowledge that reconciliation and closing the gap is not just measured by the number of Indigenous employees on our books. For Crown, the work we're doing in employment must be complemented by efforts in Indigenous education. It's pivotal, it's fundamental. Often employment and education programs don't work hand in hand, but I'm pleased to say that Crown is working on turning this around and providing pathways to employment. The Crown Resorts and the Packer Family Foundation boards have been at the forefront of work to provide further financial support for a number of leading Indigenous educational organisations. Our goal is to support organisations that are keeping students engaged in their study, at school, involved in their community and in their culture. We're committed to opening up opportunities for all young Indigenous talent to go on to great things in their chosen profession. Ladies and gentlemen, we are proud of the work we are doing here at Crown, but our efforts are small in comparison to bigger changes that need to take place in Australia, which is why we're all here tonight. Everyone in this room is aware of the changes that need to be made to achieve reconciliation in Australia. From building better relationships between the wider Australian community and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, through to constitutional recognition, we have a long way to go. But I'd like to again thank this evening Reconciliation Australia for your ongoing leadership and efforts as you unite all of us. Political parties, business leaders, community leaders, unions and the broader Australian community in what I certainly earnestly hope is meaningful progress towards closing the gap. Thank you very much and have a great evening. Okay.
Thank you, Helen. I'd like to now introduce a man who obviously needs no introduction, especially here, the father of reconciliation, and I'm proud to now say Senator Patrick Dodson.
Well, I want to acknowledge the welcome to the country that we have received, and I acknowledge the spirits of those ancestors that still live and drive the traditional owners from this part of the world, and the many leaders that have come from this part of the world over the years to help build a better Australia, people who have fought for justice, who sent petitions to kings and to prime ministers, petitioned the government on the awful treatment that the Jews received in the period of the Nazis' reign in Germany. And of course I refer to William Cooper and people of that ilk, and the leadership that's come from many, many leaders from this part of the world. I want to acknowledge the Leader of the Opposition, Bill Shorten, Warren Snowden, who's here, Shadow Minister Shane Newman, the Honourable Mr Tudge, representing the Prime Minister, and I'm not sure whether Rachel's here, but I saw her name on the list. Rachel, there she is, Senator Rachel Siewert from my own state of Western Australia, and all the other dignitaries that are here tonight, not just the politicians. We tend to get carried away with ourselves now that I've been there 10 minutes. But there are many other dignitaries here, people who've contributed to the work of reconciliation and who've made tonight possible from the corporate fields, from Rio Tinto and from other places. So I want to acknowledge that contribution as well and acknowledge those leaders. I want to certainly acknowledge Tom Calma, Professor Tom Calma, and Melinda Salento for their custodianship and their fine leadership of this entity that has picked up from the days of the Reconciliation Council and sought to sustain the dream of reconciliation in the hearts and minds of Australians. The notion of welcome to country, and we now see that carried out throughout many venues throughout Australia, was first, in fact, delivered and disseminated, I think, through the first of the Council for Aboriginal Reconciliation meetings. We acknowledge that we were on other people's country, and we acknowledge that there was a customary protocol that needed to be embedded in the way we went about our business, and we wanted to make sure that the uniqueness of each and every Aboriginal group on whose lands many other things have been built and who have become dispossessed in many ways, but that we would acknowledge their presence and their continuing struggle for justice and recognition. It was in February 1992 when the first council meeting took place, and I'm delighted to see some of the original members of that council here. I know some have passed on, and I want to acknowledge their great contribution. The council, as you know, was established under Prime Minister Hawke and under Minister Tickner. And many felt that it was established because we couldn't get sufficient public empathy and support behind the concept of a treaty that had been promised at Barunga, but that we needed a process to help educate, enlighten and create understanding and better relationships between the peoples of Australia so that ultimately we might come to something like a treaty. And I'm glad to see that there are discussions happening in this state with Koori people around that matter. But it was also my good friend Mr. Farley, who was at that time the CEO of the National Farmers Federation and not necessarily a close friend of mine at the time because I represented the land councils and we often fought in the press. But he noted that I'd changed the agenda on the first day, and we met at the old Institute for Aboriginal Studies in Canberra at Acton, and he noticed I changed the agenda. And I just want to quote what he said. He said, "I thought that was a novel approach, particularly given the weight of the agenda papers. 6 hours later, I was emotionally drained, reduced to concealed tears a couple of times, and absolutely gobsmacked by the stories I heard. They were way outside my comfort zone and challenged many of my approaches and perceptions. At the same time, I was humbled by the dignity of the Indigenous Council members and their willingness to forgive and move forward." In subsequent meetings, Mr. Foley often suggested that he was going to get a couple of cattle dogs so that I could keep people in order to get the business done at council meetings. But a great friend and a great contributor, and we should not forget the contribution of people like him and the many others who were part of bringing corporate Australia, Indigenous Australia and land councils and other entities together to sit in the one room and in the one place to try and find the common ground and then build out from the common ground. But his contribution was particularly helpful in meetings with pastoralists and other people. And I'm sure that if there was a similar mix of the diversity of the people in the room at the first meeting, of Aboriginal people and Island people and the non-Indigenous Australians, we'd find that there was a similar gap. And this is the unfortunateness about some of the work and the hard work that Reconciliation Australia and many other people have put in, that we'd find there is a similar gap in the experience and understanding between ourselves and the experiential basis of our lives and the growing desire to find some real empathy and engagement and participation in order to express in this nation something that we all desire, not just an ephemeral concept of reconciliation, but a concept that has a desire, a sense of being. In my country we call that lian, a sense of being inside, that we know we are brothers and sisters and we know we are friends and mates and that we know we can rely on each other, despite the uniqueness of our differences and the diversity of what it is we pursue. That is what the Reconciliation Council set out to do. And it came after a while of debate and discussion at that first meeting that we settled on a vision which was about a united Australia which respects this land of ours, values the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's heritage, and provides justice and equity for all. 25 years on, that vision may seem idealistic, naive, forlorn. And it hurts me to say, instead of a united Australia, the social, physical and economic gap between Indigenous Australians and our fellow citizens, except for a few important indicators, is a persistent yawning gap and chasm. And that's despite good work and hard efforts that go into this. And again, instead of respect for this land of ours, our Australian continent is being ravaged by climate change, with even the coral reefs of the Torres Straits, where our brothers and sisters live, are turning to deadly pale. Aboriginal cultural obligations of respect for country are often overridden, either by some bureaucratic process or someone without any real empathy or concern for the richness of that heritage, so that that underpinning colonial drive still mitigates against full respect for this land of ours. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander heritage is what we were talking about back in the day of the first council. And perhaps today it is more valued on gallery walls and in dancing stages. It's probably more valued today than it was back then, and which is a very good and important factor in our life and in the culture of this society we call Australia. But our heritage is disregarded or devalued in so many other domains. Even our contribution to the greatest game, and I must excuse the people who follow a different code, but in our greatest game of all, is marred by the racist sledging and booing of Indigenous sports people. But it is the vision of justice and equity for all that has faded into a far distant mirage, always out of reach, that tears at my heart and tears at it today, because we still see the overrepresentation of Indigenous peoples in custody. And we still see the institutions being built in places that are going to cause further incarceration and alienation of Indigenous peoples from their communities and their societies. And in a little place I was at last week or the week before in Wadair in the Northern Territory, it disturbed me to see that so much money is going into building a new police station, which, in my view, is going to result in a large edifice dominating the landscape and sitting over the top of the people who live there. And it occurred to me that this public sector outlay is something that could be used surely for better programs, better ways of dealing with the youth, better ways of finding how family services and other factors could be delivered in a community which borders on the brink of poverty. The reconciliation process of the 1990s was born from the recommendations of the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody. And I've argued elsewhere that the recommendations of the Commission have not been implemented by governments of all persuasions. The number of people being imprisoned and the number of women being imprisoned is an alarming matter. It's a disturbing factor of our society. A quarter of a century after we handed down those findings in the Royal Commission, the vicious cycle remains the same. Indigenous people are more likely to come to the attention of police. Indigenous people who come to the attention of police are more likely to be arrested and charged. Indigenous people who are charged are more likely to go to court. Indigenous people who appear in court are more likely to go to jail. I repeat these facts because the notion of justice and equity for all must remain a fundamental element of the reconciliation process, in whatever form it takes into the future. The people in this room, your brothers and your sisters, your families and your relations, your boardroom colleagues, deserve credit and thanks for what it is that you've done over the last 25 years to reduce these custody figures and to create the momentum and understanding and the desire for a reconciled Australia. Enormous gains have been made in families, in communities, in policies and politics. But we have this lingering anxiety and frustration, the fact that we have not been able to fully come to a position where we can feel comfortable about where we've got to in the process of reconciliation. But I suppose there is no honesty in celebrating a job that remains undone. And in part that's the message I suppose I deliver tonight, despite the fantastic setting here, and it's something we should all enjoy. Instead, let us use this occasion to commit ourselves to working together, to walking together, to achieve justice and equity for all, to always value the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander heritage, and to grow the respect for this beautiful land of ours, and build together for generations to come a united Australia. I finish tonight with these words from Nelson Mandela. And he said, "I have walked the long road to freedom. I have tried not to falter. I have made missteps along the way, but I have discovered the secret that after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb." Kalia.
Thank you, Pat. The main meal will now be served. As we do that, I'd like to welcome Deborah Cheetham and the Short Black Opera to the stage. I'll be here in just a couple of moments. Enjoy.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dana McDonald, and I'm here on behalf of our Artistic Director, Deborah Cheetham. Deborah, Tony and Jessica, mid-air somewhere between Tamworth and Melbourne, the Short Black Opera team have been running regional choral programs for the last 2 weeks in Grafton and Gunnedah. The delayed flights means that we, Dungala Children's Choir, go on without them tonight. We are the Victoria-based members of the National Dungala Choral Connection Project, and tonight we are proud to sing 2 compositions by Deborah. The first we actually helped to write in 2013, when we were trying to find a way to help Australia understand the importance of Indigenous culture and knowledge, as a way of advancing reconciliation. Accompanying us tonight is our choir manager, Kerry Garrity. It possesses the question, "I know you, but do you know me?"
Thank you. My name is Darcy Pearce and I am a founding member of Dungala Children's Choir, having been with the choir since its inception in 2009. Dungala Children's Choir is proud to be the official children's chorus for Australia's national Indigenous opera company, Short Black Opera. On September 12th of this year, we will perform Deborah Cheatham's opera Pecan Summer at the Sydney Opera House, and we hope that you will all be able to join us. Our second song is one of welcome and was composed by Deborah and James Henry for the opening of the 2015 M Pavilion. Joining us on stage this evening is Short Black Opera soprano Shonte Batsky and dance soloist Rhiannon Port. Please welcome Shonte and Rhiannon.
Go
Ladies and gentlemen, just have your attention. Thank you. Well, I hope you're enjoying the meal. I'd like to introduce now the co-chairs of Reconciliation Australia, Professor Tom Calma and Ms. Melinda Salento.
How are we going to do this?
You go.
Yes, the clicking of plates and saucers. Well, good evening, and we'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri, the Boonwurrung, Tungarong, Dja Wurrung, and the Wathaurong peoples of the Kulin Nation, the traditional owners on whose land we're meeting today, and also pay our respects and our deep acknowledgement to the elders past and present, and to thank Auntie Carolyn for her lovely introduction.
We gather here this evening to acknowledge and celebrate the alumni of the Reconciliation Movement, a movement that has achieved genuine progress towards a just and equitable Australia over the past 25 years of formal reconciliation.
We honour and thank chairs and deputies of the Council for Aboriginal Reconciliation present amongst us, Senator Patrick Dodson, the first chairperson of the Council from 1991 to 1997, and the father of reconciliation. And the Honourable Ian Viner AO QC, who was Deputy Chair from 1994 to 1997.
We honour and thank past co-chairs of Reconciliation Australia, the national expert body instituted by the Council to continue its work. The Honourable Fred Chaney, Dr Jackie Huggins, Ms Shelley Rays, Professor Mick Dodson, all here this evening enjoying this fabulous night. And Mr Mark Liebler, who was not able to join us. Thank you for guiding Reconciliation Australia with courage and vision. Tom and I are humbled to continue your work.
We honour those who cannot be with us today. Dr Evelyn Scott, educator, social activist and chairperson of the Council from 1997 to 2000, whose daughter Catherine is here with us in her stead. Sir Gustav Nussel, AC, CBE, esteemed medical researcher, former Australian of the Year and Deputy Chairperson of the Council from 1997 to 2000. And there are many others who send their apologies that they couldn't be here tonight, but they do send their well wishes. Sadly, Sir Ronald Wilson, the inaugural Deputy Chair of the Council from 1991 to 1994, is no longer with us, and he joins many of our colleagues and great contributors to the reconciliation movement who have passed on since we've commenced.
Tonight we are fortunate to be in the presence of many greats of the reconciliation movement, former members of the Council as well as our predecessors and peers on the Reconciliation Australia Board. We acknowledge and thank each and every one of you for your dedication to a just, equitable and reconciled Australia.
And there's no doubt that when the Council for Aboriginal Reconciliation delivered its final report to Prime Minister John Howard and the Australian Parliament at Corroboree 2000, sentiments from the members were soaring high. Reflecting on these moments, Council Chairperson Dr Evelyn Scott said, "Corroboree 2000 to me was a turning point where we witnessed many hundreds of thousands of people embracing reconciliation. What the Council has done over its lifespan is to put the whole process in place and put reconciliation on the national agenda. It is now up to the younger ones to deliver, and I believe that they can and will." The words of Council Deputy, the Honourable Ian Viner, were similarly upbeat. He said, "Those who walked Sydney Harbour Bridge, arms linked, sorry, written in the skies above, experienced the spirit and reality of 10 years' work. The Council's message for the future is so true. There is no worthwhile alternative to reconciliation for this nation and this land which we all share."
and this optimism was justified. In just a decade, the Council had successfully transformed reconciliation from a political issue into a people's movement. As Council member Ray Martin reflected, seeing every Australian political leader together for the first time in our history at Corroboree 2000 and watching more than 500,000 Australians walk across bridges made me think that none of this would have been possible without the leadership of the Council for Aboriginal Reconciliation.
Corroboree 2000 was just one of the many tangible and transformational outcomes of the Council's work. The 1997 Australian Reconciliation Convention, attended by 1,800 participants, was another historic landmark in the reconciliation process, which stimulated the grassroots people's movement around the country that we see today. The overarching hallmarks of the Council's work was consultation with the Australian people. The Council involved hundreds of thousands of Australians, some through small community meetings, others in major rounds of public discussion when working towards the 1997 Convention, as well as the 1995 Going Forward submission to Prime Minister Paul Keating and the 1999 development of the National Reconciliation documents presented at Corroboree 2000. As Sir Gustav Nossal, Deputy Chair of the Council, said, progress towards reconciliation has been most remarkable at the grassroots level. National Reconciliation Week is the key initiative that emerged as and remains a grassroots campaign. Evolving from a week of prayer for reconciliation started by faith communities, National Reconciliation Week, as we know it now, was launched by the Council in 1996. Today we mark its 20th anniversary and look forward to the coming weeks during which communities across the nation will celebrate and build upon respectful relationships between the wider Australian community and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples.
The Council and its members have shaped our nation over the past generation in so many ways. For the last 15 years, Reconciliation Australia has continued this work, shaping civil society, all the while enabled and driven by the legacy of those before us. Reconciliation Australia supported the 2010 establishment of the National Congress of Australia's First Peoples, which we believe remains an essential unifying national voice for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and a source of expertise for all Australians. For over a decade, Reconciliation Australia championed the development of the Australian Indigenous Governance Institute, incorporated in 2012 to provide a national centre focused on how governance practice is strengthened when Indigenous cultures and practices are at the heart of an organisation. In close consultation with the Stolen Generations, we also advocated long and hard for the national apology delivered at last in 2008.
Now, these are just some of the many tangible and transformational outcomes achieved by Reconciliation Australia's leaders and staff. Outcomes which were only possible due to the work started by the Council. But despite the evidence of progress towards genuine reconciliation, in which Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and cultures are valued as a proud part of our shared national identity, there are many people and institutions that still believe we should continue down the long-trodden path of assimilation. As the Honourable Fred Chaney AO said in his 2014 annual ANU Reconciliation Lecture, he said, "There is much in Australia today to suggest that we are not very interested in allowing room for Indigenous cultures to continue to be part of our national fabric. There is no clear message that we understand and value these cultures as part of our nation."
In recent times, Reconciliation Australia has held the nation to account when distinguished sportsman and Australian of the Year Adam Goodes was repeatedly booed on the field in response to his unabashed cultural pride. And Reconciliation Australia will continue to hold the nation to account when we witness displays of racism and denials of history, attitudes that are slowing our journey towards reconciliation.
We are equipped to meet these challenges. Guided by the diplomacy of the Council before us, Reconciliation Australia has successfully worked under various governments and remains committed to a multi-partisan approach to reconciling our nation. We'd also like to acknowledge the politicians with us today. the Honourable Bill Shorten MP, Leader of the Opposition, the Honourable Alan Tudge MP, Minister for Human Services and representing the Prime Minister, the Honourable Shane Newman MP, Shadow Minister for Indigenous Affairs, the Honourable Warren Snowden MP, Member for Lingiari, Senator Rachel Seward, Green Senator for West Australia, Senator Nova Peris, Labor Senator for the Northern Territory, Senator Patrick Dodson, and we acknowledge you again, Pat, in your capacity this time as the Labor member, the Labor Senator for West Australia. And we'd also like to recognise the Victorian MPs who were with us tonight. We also thank and acknowledge Crown Resorts for hosting us here tonight. It's a true demonstration, as Helen mentioned, of Crown's commitment to the Elevate RAP.
Slowly but surely, Reconciliation Australia continues to shape the national conversation and civil society through our driving document, The State of Reconciliation in Australia.
Now, we know of the challenges that lie ahead and are poised to rise up to them, but we can only do this and do so due to the foundations that were laid by all of those who we've mentioned who have gone before us. Thank you, enjoy the night and walk with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to now call to the stage the Honourable Alan Tudge, representing the Prime Minister. Alan.
Well, thank you very much, Stan, for the introduction, and it's a great pleasure for me to be here on behalf of the Prime Minister today in front of so many distinguished guests. Can I acknowledge Auntie Carolyn and her very warm introduction and very warm welcome to country on behalf of the traditional owners on whose land we meet today. To Tom and Melinda, thank you for hosting us here today at this magnificent venue and for putting on this terrific evening tonight. All the other special guests here, Warren Mundine, the Chairman of the Indigenous Advisory Council, my colleagues who are here, Bill Shorten, of course, the Leader of the Opposition, who we'll hear from in a moment, Rachel Seward, the other Members of Parliament, Shane Newman, Warren Snowden, and my friend Heidi Victoria, the Shadow Indigenous Affairs spokesperson here in Victoria. And of course, Senator Pat Dodson, and it's terrific to see him here as the newest member of the Parliament at this stage. And I know that he wears two hats tonight. Of course, the hat has been the father of reconciliation, and of course now being a colleague of all of ours as being the Senator, the Labor Senator for Western Australia. And I take this opportunity, Pat, particularly to acknowledge you and thank you for your contribution to reconciliation now over 25 years and more. Of course, the inaugural chair of the Council of Reconciliation, and there's perhaps few people, if any, who have done more to the cause of reconciliation over the last 25 years than you have, Pat, and so I absolutely acknowledge and thank you for the work that you have done. And I think I can confidently say that we all look forward to your further contributions from the parliamentary benches, and I certainly look forward personally to continuing to work with you in that new role as well. Tonight is rightly a night of celebration. 25 years is a long time, and sometimes I know in Indigenous affairs it feels like that progress can be painfully slow, but when you reflect upon 25 years of progress, it's actually been a remarkable period of change. You look back, native title, of course, has been recognised, educational opportunities expanded, companies have reached out like never before, often guided and prodded through the development of reconciliation action plans. There are over 9,000 Indigenous-owned businesses today. Attitudes of all Australians have changed, and indeed 3/4 of Australians today believe that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures are important to Australia's national identity. We're getting closer to parity in university enrolments. Some are now studying and graduating from places like Harvard, Cambridge and Oxford. And of course, we have an Indigenous person in Ken Wyatt, my mate, who is a Minister of the federal government, the first person to do so. I think perhaps importantly too, after 25 years, we have come to the realisation that there is no practical reconciliation versus symbolic reconciliation, that you actually need both streams to occur, and I think all of us have now agreed that that is exactly on the path that we are on. So these are tremendous advancements, which I think that we should all celebrate, but at the same time we cannot sugarcoat the enormity of the job that remains, and particularly in the remote areas of Australia. And these, of course, cannot be solved by governments alone. We can only address these things together. And from the government's perspective, led by Malcolm Turnbull, the Prime Minister, our commitment to Indigenous advancement has never been stronger. But it is a commitment to do things with Indigenous people, not to them. And I've myself been working on Indigenous policy for 15 years or more now, on and off, and I can certainly say from my direct personal observations that without that Indigenous leadership and without that Indigenous engagement, it is just so difficult to make meaningful, real progress. And of course, on top of that, the greatest progress that we can make occurs when we have bipartisan agreement for particular initiatives, and thankfully, at least in this space, we tend to have a common cause for Indigenous advancement and can typically work together. So over in the next 12 months, as a government, we hope that together we can significantly advance constitutional recognition and hold a referendum, ideally on or around May 2017. We commit to developing a new regional approach to empowering communities based on the Empowered Communities report. That seeks a new way of engagement and partnership with governments. Together with you, the government will continue to progress our core priorities of ensuring adults have employment, kids are learning and communities are safe. Today, as you may be aware, the Prime Minister announced a further initiative to support the developments of the Indigenous business sector, which we know translates directly to more Indigenous jobs. This new $115 million Indigenous Entrepreneurs Package will provide grants to new and growing businesses so that they can grow, employ and generate wealth. And this particular initiative builds on initiatives which we have already put in place to support the Indigenous business sector, including the new government procurement policy, which I think is an absolute game changer for Indigenous businesses. And since this policy began in just July of last year, 911 contracts worth $154 million have been awarded to Indigenous businesses, and that was pretty much from a standing start 12 months ago, which is quite extraordinary. We maintain our commitments to using government procurements to procure 3% of contracts to Indigenous businesses by 2020, and today's announcement by the Prime Minister will just aid that as well. I'd like to just finish my remarks, if I could, this evening, just to congratulate the many people who are here tonight who have been on the journey with Reconciliation Australia for many, many years. I know that Pat and Melinda have acknowledged, Tom and Melinda, have acknowledged many of those people here, and there's so much wisdom and experience in this room. But I'd also like to acknowledge all the business people who are here with us today and tonight as well. So many businesses today are doing such great work in educating their employees, in giving young Indigenous people a start in a job, in procuring goods and services from Indigenous businesses, or in sending their best and brightest people to go and work with Indigenous organisations around the country. And we've acknowledged Crown as such a business. I know Peter Nash here from KPMG, and there's all sorts of other business leaders here who do such a good job, and through their initiatives, they change attitudes and they change lives, and so we acknowledge them as well. Tonight is a night to celebrate the successes of our nation on the journey to reconciliation and to thank those leaders who have led the charge. This is not easy work. In fact, it is hard, it's challenging. We all have our setbacks from time to time, but we have made very great progress over the last 25 years together, and we can make more progress. And on behalf of the Prime Minister, we recommit to continue the journey of reconciliation together.
Thank you, Alan. I'd like to now introduce the Leader of the Opposition, Bill Shorten.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank Auntie Caroline for her welcome, and I too acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, and I pay my respects to their elders, both past and present. I acknowledge all Aboriginal leaders who are here this evening. From Darwin, where I started my day, to the small community of Maningrida on the coast of Arnhem Land, where I met remarkable Aboriginal rangers this afternoon, to the great city of Melbourne where we gather tonight. This ancient continent is, was, and always will be Aboriginal land. I think all of us feel a little special tonight to have heard Archie perform, although I had to concede to him that I first heard him perform at the Royal Derby in Fitzroy more years ago than I care to admit. We're privileged to hear Deborah Chetham's opera group and the choir of young people perform as they did. I know that we're always privileged to hear Pat Dodson and Tom Calma speak. And I'm also pleased to be here with my colleagues Shane Newman and Warren Snowden and Nova Peris. And Labor's newest, yeah, she deserves a round of applause. And of course, Labor's newest Senator, Senator Pat Dodson. And I also have to extend the apologies of Linda Burney, who has been a champion of reconciliation. She's busy in that otherwise important matter, the election, winning her seat, and she'll do a great job in Parliament if she's elected. I'd like to acknowledge Alan Tudge for his words, Rachel Seward for what she's about to say, and my colleague Natalie Hutchins, the Victorian Minister, who's leading innovative, trailblazing discussions about treaty. In fact, I just acknowledge all of you. You're all distinguished people. I'm here in the middle of an election campaign because this week, Reconciliation Week, reminds us that after 25 years of your work, we have done some things well. But I'm also here in the middle of an election campaign because I just want to tell the truth. I want to admit that we have not yet shifted the systemic problems of division and distrust. We are all embarked on a constitutional recognition journey. Parliamentary committees, expert reports, other submissions, the good work of Recognise, all have informed this conversation. I promise that a future Labor government will advance recognition in partnership with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. A Labor government, if elected, will be forward-leaning, conscious that changing our constitution is about agreeing on a head of power for the Parliament to use to make laws. We understand Aboriginal people have been the custodians of this land for more than 40,000 years. Constitutional recognition is to enhance the Parliament's recognition when making laws. But we must be honest. The relationship between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and other Australians is still not working as it should. How do we reset this relationship? How do we achieve real equality? It comes from being truthful. It comes from mutual respect for both our rich heritages and our mutual contributions to this wonderful land of ours. Right now, there is still not fundamental agreement about how the country was taken from Aboriginal people, or the issues about settlement and colonisation. We need a process to find common ground on such matters for the common good of our nation. Now, the disgraceful fiction of terra nullius has been disproved. But without a future framework agreed with Aboriginal people, all the arguments from 1788 will continue to plague us in one form or another. Our goal should be to agree to a future which gives all pride and respect. Finding what it is that we can all accommodate has been the basis of the Reconciliation Council's work. Ensuring the respect, the richness of the cultures of our First Peoples, along with our Western traditions and our modern multiculture, it enriches the identity of our nation. We must acknowledge there is unfinished business and there are new pathways to be developed. The reconciliation process has provided a constructive opportunity for our nation to find agreement on these fundamental issues, or at least help us settle them. But the concept of reconciliation has, for too long, been split by some into a false dichotomy: practical reconciliation on one hand, and symbolic actions like compensation and agreements on the other. The truth is we need agreement on both paths. The practical focus, well represented by Crown, has been on reconciliation action plans, jobs, industries, codes of conduct in sport to discourage racism, and in program setting and implementation. A lot of real effort by police and courts has been made. A lot of individual courage and leadership on both the Indigenous and non-Indigenous side has been shown. Unfortunately, we cannot truly celebrate these wonderful achievements whilst there is still a sense of injustice lingering in the hearts of Aboriginal people, in the minds of our first Australians. It is because we have not settled the issues that mitigate against every good intention we embark upon as a parliament. Land taken and still being taken through the extinguishment of native title, destabilised Indigenous societies and communities, children taken away, the underpayment of wages and lost wages, and systemic racism is still far too prevalent. The insidious nature of stubborn racism is still a reality for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander individuals, even regardless of the status and stature they achieve in our society. Every generation of Aboriginal athlete, from Doug Nicholls to Nicky Winmar to Michael Long to Adam Goods, has known this truth. And when this discrimination occurs, it percolates down to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples on the street everywhere, every day. Now, I know that racism is not true of most Australians. I am unbelievably proud when I'm witness to those Australians who stand up against the heinousness of racism. But there is much more we must do as parents, as educators, as citizens, indeed as leaders. I'm a little bit proud, actually, that for the past 2 days of this campaign, I've had the privilege of meeting with members of the Stolen Generation on National Sorry Day. I've seen the success of Aboriginal Health Services, of Michael Long's Leadership Centre, of the STARS program for girls. I was so fortunate that I was able to visit the traditional owners on their country. And I saw today the pride the Aboriginal Rangers take in their work, looking after our coasts, managing our national estate for the benefit of all Australians. These issues deserve to be in the centre square of our national political debate. They may not change an election, but they can change the nation. We must commit ourselves, rededicate ourselves to addressing the hard issues, the uncomfortable issues, the issues which we don't wish our children to see in the mirror of who this nation is. I speak of the issues of inequality, of injustice, and a post-constitutional recognition settlement. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples must be equal, empowered partners in deciding in what such a settlement should look like. Only then, when we work together, will we be in a place to resolve the gnawing, unresolved divisions of the soul of our nation, and we will get to this day where we can truly celebrate the unity of our nation and our achievements with great pride, a day I look forward to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. And now the Senator Rachel Siewert representing the Greens. Thank you, Rachel.
Hi everybody. I too would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting and pay my respect to elders past, present and future, and acknowledge that this land was never ceded. I'd also like to acknowledge Senator Pat Dodson, Senator for Western Australia and Father of Reconciliation. Auntie Caroline, thank you for the wonderful welcome to country. The Honourable Alan Tudge, representing the Prime Minister, the Honourable Bill Shorten, Leader of the Opposition, Professor Tom Kalmar and Melinda Cilento, Co-Chairs of Reconciliation Australia, Mr Justin Mohammed, CEO of Reconciliation Australia. It is 25 years since the establishment of the Council for Aboriginal Reconciliation, which was established to promote, according to the Council for Australian Reconciliation Act of 1991, Section 5, a process of reconciliation between Aborigines and Torres Strait Islanders and the wider Australian community. As well as it being the anniversary of the establishment of the Council for Aboriginal Reconciliation, this year also marks 25 years since the report of the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody. And the final recommendation of that report was that all political leaders and their parties recognise that reconciliation between the Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal communities in Australia must be achieved if community division, discord and injustice to Aboriginal people are to be avoided. To this end, the Commission recommends that political leaders use their best endeavours to ensure bipartisan public support for the process of reconciliation and that the urgency and necessity of the process be acknowledged. 25 years later, there is political support for the process of reconciliation. Of that, there is no doubt, and it can be seen here tonight. Just as a quick aside, I would suggest that we should be using the word multi-party support because there are now multiple parties that we need to involve in this process. There has been significant progress on reconciliation, and before then the Council, have played a key role in that. Many of the people in this room have been part of that, and I'd like to take the opportunity to thank those who have campaigned for their struggle and thank them on behalf of generations to come who will benefit from the years of working towards reconciliation. But we have a long way to go. Reconciliation is still something that we need to work towards, and we need to do it urgently. The report earlier this year by Reconciliation Australia, the state of reconciliation in Australia, painted us a very revealing picture. With 33% of Aboriginal people reporting experiencing verbal abuse. 62% believe prejudice is high. Aboriginal children are almost 10 times more likely to end up in out-of-home care than non-Aboriginal children. And the number of Aboriginal children going into out-of-home care is increasing. The Change the Record campaign reminds us that tragically, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander adults are imprisoned at a rate 13 times higher than non-Aboriginal adults. We also know that there is much left to do in terms of closing the gap on health, education and life expectancy outcomes. We have a long way to go. The 25th anniversary of Reconciliation Australia also requires us to look at what's next. Findings in the State of Reconciliation report also indicate that until we accept our past, make amends for injustices and pledge to ensure that these wrongs are never repeated, we will not achieve true reconciliation. The voices calling to go beyond where we are now are growing louder and louder. And I talk of the voices of calling for sovereignty and treaty or treaties. As I said, they are growing louder and louder. Sovereignty and treaty or treaties, because I personally think there is likely to be many because we are made up of many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander nations. Sovereignty and treaties and constitutional recognition are part of addressing these historical issues. I deeply believe, as do the Greens, that we will not have a truly reconciled nation until we address these issues. We must address these issues directly. Processes to discuss constitutional recognition are well underway, and I have been part of that. The Greens are proposing that we look to the future and that we invest in national conversations on sovereignty and treaty, because it is going to take a long time to address those issues, the same as it has taken a long time to get to the point where we are now in those intense discussions over constitutional recognition. I, for one, deeply believe that constitutional recognition does not rule out the issues of sovereignty and treaty, and as a nation we are capable of achieving constitutional recognition and addressing the issues of sovereignty and treaty. As the state of reconciliation in Australia report highlights, unless we address these historical issues, we cannot achieve full reconciliation. We need to address these issues to be a truly reconciled nation, and I and the Greens are committed to progressing those discussions and look forward to our national conversations about how we get there and achieve a truly reconciled nation.
Thank you, Rachel. I'd now like to introduce Mr. Justin Mohammed to deliver his address.
Thank you. Like the other speakers before me, I'd like to acknowledge Aunty Caroline's warm welcome she gave us before, and acknowledge the traditional owners of this land which we meet on. It's very important, this part of Australia. I spent 25 years in Victoria, and the Aboriginal affairs movement or political advancement, there's been so many stories that date back centuries in this state of Australia. So in doing so, traditional owners of this land, both elders, both past and present, I pay my respects and acknowledge what you have contributed to Aboriginal affairs in Australia and in Victoria. Also, I'd like to say thanks and extend a very warm welcome and for everyone in attendance here tonight. We've got a room full of VIPs, and the strength that you provide for your families, communities, workplaces in our nation, I say thank you for. I welcome the distinguished guests, which many have been mentioned a number of times, but I'll mention a few again. The Honourable Alan Tudge, MP, Opposition Leader, Honourable Bill Shorten, MP, the Australian Greens, Senator Rachel Stewart, Labor Senator for WA, Patrick Dodson, Members of Parliament, you know who you are, State MP, Natalie Hutchison, and also just like to take this moment just to say thank you on behalf of Reconciliation Australia to Nova Paris, Senator Nova Paris, for her 3 years that she has served in government. You've been an inspiration and you've done us proud as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and I'd like to say thank you. As we celebrate 25 years of formal reconciliation in Australia, I extend my deepest respect and gratitude to the alumni of Reconciliation Movement, from former chairs, deputies, members of the Council for Aboriginal Reconciliation and Reconciliation Australia. Many of them are here tonight, and I hope you have enjoyed, and we've pulled together this gathering in honour of you and your work that you've done. Thank you. To acknowledge the determination, leadership and vision, tonight we celebrate your contributions, commitment, vision and achievements. 25 years ago was a different world than what it is today, and a number of things that you stood for, you have written in papers which I've read since being a relatively new CEO to Reconciliation Australia, still stands very much firm today. The Reconciliation Movement is about healing the past and committing to a better future, a future which we value First Australians and provide justice and equity for all. 25 years ago, members of the Council for Aboriginal Reconciliation knew that advancing reconciliation would be a generational project. So now we're a generation down the track. In what state do we find reconciliation in Australia? Launched earlier this year, the State of Reconciliation in Australia report highlights the milestones achieved in Australia's reconciliation journey over the past 25 years and recommends the way forward if we are to realise our potential as a reconciled nation. This is the first report of its kind since the Council for Aboriginal Reconciliation handed its final report to Parliament in 2000. The State of Reconciliation in Australia offers a strong vision and shared language for all Australians. This vision is expressed in the new Reconciliation Australia branding, which you can see all around us here tonight. It's a singular, unbroken line, a strong and unified pathway to reconciliation, and has 5 arches, which represent the 5 interrelated dimensions of reconciliation as defined in the State of Reconciliation Report of Australia. These 5 dimensions are race relations, equality, equity, unity, institutional integrity and historical acceptance. Building unity, strength and optimism for our nation is vitally important. The journey ahead needs to have the breadth and the depth depicted in the 5 dimensions and cannot be done in isolation from each other, but woven together to achieve full reconciliation in Australia. Our report gives the nation a clear framework to define and represent and measure our progress moving forward. The report comes at a critical time in Australia's history. It comes at a period when reconciliation is an increasingly important part of the national conversation. And a clear message of this conversation is that until we achieve true reconciliation, we continue to fall short of reaching our full potential as a nation. In line with the 5 dimensions, a reconciled Australia will be an Australia in which race relations are positive, where relationships between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander and non-Indigenous Australians are free from racism and build on trust and respect. An Australia where Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples can participate equally in all areas of life, where the unique rights of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples are recognised and upheld. It will be an Australia unified by recognising and valuing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders' cultures and history. Unified by celebrating these cultures as a proud part of our shared nation's identity. In this Australia, reconciliation will be actively supported by the nation's political and business institutions and community and social sectors. Crucially, in this Australia, there will be a widespread acceptance of our nation's history, particularly the wrongs of the past, and the ongoing impact of these wrongs will be understood and will never be repeated. The condition of reconciliation in Australia will only ever be as strong as the weakest dimension. Despite these challenges, there is a desire among Australians for a deeper understanding of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories, cultures, and to be more unified as a nation. Reconciliation Australia's key program areas are designed to turn this goodwill into action in our businesses, in our schools, and in our communities. Our Reconciliation Action Plan, or RAPS as most people would know, have been running now for almost 10 years. With over 700 organisations now committed to reconciliation through their RAP, that provides organisations with a strategic and practical plan of action built on relationships, respect and opportunities. And these plans create powerful social change and economic opportunities. More than 35,000 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are employed in organisations that have RAPs. Organisations which have generated over 77 million in education scholarships and have spent 32 million on goods and services from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander businesses in the last financial year alone. For the 3 million Australians now working and studying in our organisations with a RAP, the attitudinal outcomes are also great. We see there's less prejudice in these RAP organisations compared to the general community. We see that employees of RAP organisations have a higher trust of their Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander colleagues compared to the general community. So I'd like to acknowledge and thank the RAP partners here tonight, this evening, for the positive transformation you're creating through making reconciliation part of your core business. Thank you. We have great ambitions for our RAPs, and we want to see RAPs as a seamless initiative of every Australian organisation. In particular, we're working towards having the majority of the ASX 200 and Australia's largest private firms, multinationals, implementing RAPs. We also see local governments as an untapped opportunity to embrace RAPs, so the reconciliation can be progressed into urban suburbs, regional areas, rural and remote communities. Reconciliation Australia is also supporting schools and early learning services to develop RAPs through the Narragawnawali program. Narragawnawali is accessed through an easy-to-use online platform which provides a RAP development tool as well as access to curriculum and professional learning resources. Over 500 schools and services are currently using the Narragawnawali framework, which will soon be accessible to individual students, parents and community members. And through our Indigenous Governance Awards, we're seeing powerful, effective use and the diverse and innovative models of governance in our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander organisations and communities. When true Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community governance is implemented, there is no other system, program or organisation that can come close in delivering positive outcomes and addressing the real needs of our communities. And our Indigenous Governance Awards recognise and reward these high-performing organisations. We urge governments at all levels to ensure Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander governance and organisations are empowered to thrive. They are truly the foundations for building sustainable, healthy and prosperous communities. And more recently, Reconciliation Australia we've been working with the Australian Literacy and Numeracy Foundation on its groundbreaking first language revitalisation and literacy work, the development of digital solutions, first language to English community, children's dictionaries, offer innovative ways for groups to collate, organise and share and disperse language elements as a vibrant living collection of language. Collective investment is required to consolidate this project in particular, and we call upon our partners to consider this opportunity to support Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander languages as part of your commitment to reconciliation. There is more information out in the foyer about this, and it is a very worthwhile cause as we see Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander language being revitalised throughout all of our communities across Australia. Through these program areas, reconciliation has identified and capitalised on opportunities to advance our reconciliation journey. The State of Reconciliation in Australia report clearly articulates further measures that can move us towards a truly reconciled future. There are 7 key areas for action, but this evening, time permits for me to focus on just 1 or 2. Achieving a process to recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and unite all Australians. We cannot let the opportunity for a meaningful and a substantial recognition of Aboriginal First Peoples in our Constitution slip us by. We cannot let the opportunity to eliminate racial discrimination in our founding documents slip us by. If there's ever been a better time for a referendum to enact these changes, it is now. Equally, can I say equally, it is good to see, actually it's great to see, the formal discussions and dialogue that is finally taking place regarding treaties, self-determination, sovereignty, and new agreement-making processes across our nation. These conversations should not be held in isolation from each other, but collectively welcomed across this nation. Our State of Reconciliation report endorses these discussions and acknowledges that many of these unresolved recommendations and conversations need to be resolved for our nation to truly walk together. The impending election cannot miss the opportunity for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander affairs and the issues of reconciliation. It is at this critical juncture, many of the agreements set between the federal, state and territory governments under the Closing the Gap framework have now come to an end. This creates a vital opportunity for the next federal government to engage the states and territories in consultation with communities to renew and expand these important arrangements. We encourage the next government to reaffirm commitments to continue consultation and collaboration with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander organisations in order to bring about effective long-term change. This needs to be done across all levels, local, regional, state and nationally, to realise our shared vision for the reconciled future. Reconciliation in Australia encourages the next federal government, and indeed all governments, to work in genuine partnership with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and their representative bodies. Despite the challenges, there is a desire for a more unified nation. This presents a pivotal opportunity to make reconciliation a national priority. We must continue to harness the goodwill and aspirations of Australian people and fuel the nation's conversation for the next 25 years. Only by maintaining this momentum do we have the hope of achieving a just, equitable and reconciled Australia, a nation at its best, a nation we can all be proud of.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you. So now coming to the end of the formal part of our evening, and I'd like to say thank you for all of you for coming and all of the guests that we've heard from tonight. I'd like to leave you with just a couple of observations and a little story of personal reconciliation as well. I've been really honoured these last couple of days to be involved in what could be historic talks towards a treaty here in Victoria, which will surely shine a light for the rest of the country. And as a non-Victorian, it was an extraordinary moment to be invited to be part of that discussion. And I was reflecting on the many years that I spent reporting around the world and seeing the big shifts of history, seeing new nations born, like East Timor, that was born out of many years of bloodshed, seeing contested borders in the Middle East, where we are still seeing violence that touches our lives here in Australia, the ethnic and sectarian hatreds that have divided countries from Northern Ireland to parts of Europe, parts of Africa and Southeast Asia, to the relics of the Cold War in North and South Korea, and the violent borders of Ukraine and Russia. And then to come back to a country a couple of years ago here that, yes, is struggling with the darkness of its past, but is doing so with hope and also in peace, and that is rare and that is remarkable. Last year, I received a letter from an old man in Cowra in New South Wales, and he told me that he grew up on a farm next to where my ancestors came from, land that my ancestors were displaced from. He said he used to wander the farm and collect old Aboriginal artefacts. He'd lost many of them except for a stone axe. And he said that in recent weeks he'd had an overwhelming urge to contact me and to return the axe. He felt as if this is who it truly belonged to. Indeed, the land that it came from was where my great-grandfather was born. And he returned the axe, and I could hold it in my hand, a physical reminder of our history. An axe that had passed from our ancient past down through a time of violence and dispossession into the hands of a man who inherited a land that we were forced from, and then to me, and back home to my family. And it wasn't just the story of that axe, it was the story of the land itself. Something that belonged to this land, that passed through the hands of a man who was descended from white settlers and back into the hands of a Wiradjuri man and back into a Wiradjuri family. It's a personal story that speaks to not the things that divide us, but the thing ultimately that unites us all in this country, and that is the land itself. Thank you again for joining us. I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening, and we'll have entertainment from the Marindas in just a moment. Thank you.